Okay, so how you doing? Welcome to my talk from Black Box to Open Book. Governance strategies to successfully transition government to open. So my name is Lehane. I'm a senior program manager at Calamuna. I've been working in digital for 15 plus years, delivering complex digital products to clients really all across the spectrum. Entertainment, higher ed, government, etc., etc. I'm also a cat guy, and in my spare time I like to write horror stories. And I have a podcast. If anyone's interested, they can sign up. And what is Calamuna? Calamuna is a digital agency, a full-service digital agency that designs and builds digital products for mission-driven organizations. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about digital transformation. Specifically, strategies that we as program and project managers, digital leaders, can follow that's going to put us in the best position to deliver open source software to government clients. Specifically, I'm going to look at some common reasons to undertake digital transformation, some of the major challenges in doing so, especially in a government context, especially here in Canada, and then lastly look at how we can tailor our program approach. Okay, undertaking transformation. So, what motivates us to undertake digital transformation or a digital modernization initiative? There are a lot of reasons. Here are some of the most common ones that I've seen. So number one, you may be saddled with a black box application or a black box application within your larger system that is no longer compliant. Two, you may not have support any longer or maybe never at all. Which really puts you into a high-risk situation, especially if your system's a utility-grade system or something that has legal requirements around uptime. Three, your system, or your product rather, could start acting, as far as you can tell, given you don't have support, but it could start acting in a way that's unpredictable or unreliable. Entropy starts to creep in over time. And this can lead to extended downtime and costly dev work. Number four, you may have no backup plan. You may have no real disaster recovery plan at all. And five, related to all of this, you may not even own the product or even the ecosystem that your data lives in. In fact, you may not even own your data, right? So you can't even modernize it or transform it even if you wanted to. So these are some pretty big reasons why everyone should be engaging in some form of digital transformation all the time, right? So why don't we? It's risky. Failure is super common. And it's especially common in large-scale IT projects, large-scale government projects, open source or not, agile or not. Numerous studies and reports show that large-scale DT projects, they fail to meet anything like the desired outcomes in anything like the desired time frame or budget. I came in here from Eglinton and Bathurst this morning, and I'm still looking at when that streetcar is going to come in, that LRT. All right. So here are two big, high-profile, rather, Canadian government failures. So the system on the left, the Phoenix payroll system. This was a custom-built federal payroll system. It was closed source, built by IBM and CGI. After 8 years, its initial $300 million budget ballooned to over $4 billion. And it's still today suffering something like 400,000 faulty payments per month. Back in 2019, as a result of multiple lawsuits, the federal government was forced to distribute 4.3 million compensatory hours to federal employees. So basically, it had to give out 179,000 paid days of leave to compensate for this. Now the second product here is ArriveCan. This is an app, I'm sure many of you potentially use it. It's an app to allow travelers to Canada to submit declaration forms quicker and easier when crossing the border. This had an original budget of about 80,000, that ballooned to over 60 million. And sorry, I'm trying to move a mouse here. Can't find it. Anyway, a few months ago, the Auditor General basically just concluded that this was straight up fraud, and you know, a lot of rules were not followed in the federal government space. So, how do government and open source software get along? Well, on paper, they get along very, very well. There's been this global movement for at least 10 to 20 years, depending on how you want to, time frame it, and to basically make government be open data, move all software and technology decisions and products and such into open source software. To quote John Anali, the code-based steward at the Foundation for Public Code, he said, "We think that it's an absolute necessity of public sector governance to have technological sovereignty so that policymakers can shape the function of public software just like they can shape legally formulated policies." So, sorry, I cannot find my mouse on this screen. Okay, that's annoying. Okay, so anyway, here are a whole bunch of examples of this in practice. So globally, we have the European Commission that's been pushing for open source. It's a basically open source government across Europe. We have the Open Source Initiative, which is an organization, a not-for-profit in Palo Alto, actually from the late 90s. It's still going today. That sort of champions open source advocacy in the private sector and in the public sector. And then we have the Foundation for Public Code. And over here on the left, we have some examples, some prominent examples here in North America. We have the Canadian Digital Service, which is great. And the logo to the next of it is the logo, or shall I say was the logo of the Ontario Digital Service, which was, very, very prominent organization that was disbanded, government organization disbanded a few months back. And then we have some US examples. So Canada has been incredibly enthusiastic about open source digital transformation since at least 2008, with the launch of the first directive on management of IT, which spelled out that basically government had to rely on open source whenever, wherever possible. And that policy was replaced in 2020 with the directive on service and digital, and then also the policy on service and digital, further elaborated in 2022's Digital Ambition, which is this policy that was released and stewarded by Canada's Chief Innovation Officer. Its overall goal is to make Canada a digital-first government. And some of the major themes of it, I won't read all of this, but I will say, excellence in technology and operation with de-risked technical landscape, modern, agile, human-centered practices. Another one here, simpler, trusted, digitally driven services and programs and underpinned by Government of Canada-wide data integration and management. So, this is all really great. Canada's doing really well. Except that despite this enthusiasm, there have been missteps, reversals, and really a general confusion along the way. The rehousing of the Canadian Digital Service, for instance, from the Treasury Board into Service Canada has caused a lot of confusion. We had a Minister of Digital Government from 2018, but that was disbanded in 2021. As I said before, the Ontario Digital Service disbanded in March of this past year. Ministries and roles are constantly being shuffled about. There's no countrywide consensus or even a mandate. There's this general directive from above, but that's about it. And Canada is losing ground relative to its international partners. A report put out by authors at the Metropolitan University said that Canada's ranking on the United Nations e-Government Development Index has dropped from 6th back in 2003 all the way down to 32nd in 2022. Only 23% of government services are actually available online end-to-end. So, why is it so difficult? We see digital transformation fail, frankly, at every level, from the micro level, from the actual project level, all the way up to the national or organizational level. And it kinds of fails for many of the same reasons. At the program level, there's a lack of cohesive vision and deep understanding of the needs of users, both internal and customer or external. There's a disconnect between what the organization wants the digital product to do and what users actually need it to do. Two, like in many government and enterprise organizations, frankly, there's resistance to change, coupled with a lack of strong change management, mostly deriving from number one. And three, when the need to reconsider and reprioritize arises, and we all know that this occurs a lot on large-scale projects over time, organizational leadership isn't equipped to make small pivots, nor are they inclined to. Four, this is a big one. Civil servants in leadership often are not the best equipped to make technology decisions. So as a result, it's normal to contract with suppliers and vendors or system integrators. But because of the lack of technological know-how or acumen inside government, it becomes really hard for them to manage and oversee vendors and partners, especially when you sign up with a closed source enterprise partner that's perhaps more interested in selling their own product than in aligning its goals to that of the organization. Then lastly, again, so lack of trained people. So why does failure matter? It matters because a loss of faith in digital systems leads to a loss of faith in government. Reports of taxpayer dollars wasted makes government agencies more cautious to undertake desperately needed digital transformation. So it's up to us as digital leaders to do everything we can to improve delivery. And if I could find that mouse. Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I made all my notes really big and then I can't read half of them. Okay, so everything that I've said here, all of these reasons I've highlighted around why transformation fails, why it's so difficult to create sustained change in government, combined with this global technological and project management shift and this innovation toward agile continually, innovation toward open source continually. What this really signals to us is that we're right in the midst of a paradigm shift. Classic paradigm shift, which is defined, by definition, is tenacious and hard to navigate. So most government agencies, frankly, fall somewhere in the middle right now, between heavily closed source, heavily traditionally managed, to on the other side, open source, very agile, very adaptive. And most government agencies tend to still, however, follow practices, especially around procurement funding practices and reporting and monitoring that sort of aligns more with the building of a building than it does to adapting user needs of a digital product. A co-founder of the Canadian Digital Service, Ryan Androsoff, in his Think Digital podcast, says that digital government hasn't really taken root despite the mandates and mission statements and such, and he posits that there's still resistance to change at deeper levels of bureaucracy. So as a result, many government agencies are practicing a form of agile theater. They think they're agile, they say they're agile, et cetera, but when the rubber hits the road, they're just following old practices. So, thanks for indulging me in the first part of this, which is my brief survey of this anything but clear digital government landscape. So, I will now shift over to an example. So, unfortunately, this is not a Canadian example, but this is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is out of the San Francisco Bay Area. It operates the 511.org, which is a major real-time resource for the 7 million plus commuters and travelers in the Bay Area. The most important part of this website is real-time data that's pulled in from various feeds, both internal and external to the MTC. It shows incidents, alerts, road closures, traffic delays, transit problems, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me. This API proxy application aggregates data in real time from 27 different transit agencies, and it also then takes this data and feeds it back out, gives it out to customers like Google Maps, Bing, and various other large data consumers. It's one of the busiest in the United States and one of the busiest, frankly, in the world. But the API proxy system that does all of this work it was failing. It was a closed source little application. It was failing. It was having a lot of downtime, and the downtime was getting longer and more expensive to fix, and Kalamuna was on the hook to maintain it, support it, and keep it alive. So thankfully, we were able to convince the agency that it was time to rebuild it and replace it. So, this isn't an introduction to project management talk. I'm not going to talk about how we did any of this. I'm going to say that in the end, it was successful. It took a couple of years, and we did launch this OSS platform to replace it. But what I want to share are some strategies that fall into these sort of themes in program management that I would suggest you consider adopting these or consider exploring these themes to help bolster your program's chances of delivering successful outcomes. So the first one is excuse me, what I call foster partnership. These are strategies to help transition you from vendor to partner. And why does this matter? Because partners are trusted. You're more willing to take risks with a partner, you're more willing to listen with a partner. You're more engaged. 2 is making considered technology choices. There are a lot of different ways to make technology decisions, some more basic or superfluous ways, or superficial ways rather, can lead to costly mistakes. And then the third theme is around developing a growth mindset with your partners. We need to demonstrate how our projects, though discrete and finite, roll up into a bigger picture for our clients. We need to show, through success after success after success, how we can achieve those bigger, longer-term objectives. So these 3 themes, it's not one after the other necessarily. They feed back into each other, and we're constantly exploring them. So, the first one, foster partnership. I call this foster partnership because partnership doesn't happen overnight. It's something that takes commitment and positive action to grow and to develop. So the first point here is to engage the full community of stakeholders. Start by identifying the broader set of stakeholders impacted by your program. In many government agencies, the technology ecosystem is fractured and managed by separate groups of consultants and sub-consultants. We need to identify them all, talk to them, engage them, find out who their stakeholders are and who their users are. The second point is about user needs over technical requirements. It's pretty easy with large-scale IT projects to get subsumed by requirements, to let technology drive the conversation. We need to always remind our partners that technology is there to serve the needs of the users, not the other way around. So we delve deep into user research to identify real needs, real goals, real jobs to be done, however you want to define it, of the people that are actually using the technology at every stage. So internal as well as external. These, in an agile sense, these user needs, they become the bulk of the high-level business rules, which become the requirements of the system. The next is about sharing risk management. So all too often, risk management is done superficially in an RFP process and then never done again, or it's done really well in depth right at the beginning of a project and then never followed up on. Risk analysis and management is something that is an ongoing thing. You have to be doing it consistently and constantly. And you need to share that risk management with your clients. It's not on the vendor to just identify all risks. It's also important to identify positive risk as well as negative risk. So positive risks are things like, your building permit or whatever could come in early. So in a risk management plan, you're always looking at ways to mitigate the likelihood of a negative risk happening while amplifying the likelihood of a positive risk. Okay, so all of this will help lead to a shared vision of success. So only a few more slides here. So the second theme is around making considered technology choices. Because there are so many different ways to leverage open source to implement any technical solution, we need to review our technical requirements across the board in light of the user research we do to create a more robust set of requirements for the digital products we build. and to create a set of criteria by which we can evaluate different technical options that we can pursue. When we do this, when we prioritize users, the a priori technical requirements get refined, and we can create a more complete requirements traceability matrix that better ties together development efforts to user functionality and features. So here's an example of how you can do it. On the left we have ranked priority requirements, or aspects like that, and then you can just go along comparing different vendors. You should also compare, like we did with Kalamuna, we're a development agency, so we looked at how we would stack up if we were to build it from scratch. How this can end up looking. Here's an example. This isn't from this project, but this is from a CMS project. But you get different criteria and different scales from when you're comparing. But in the end, you're going to want to normalize it. Normalize all the different scales, so you can end up with something like a point system, which usually helps us identify a clear winner in the end. Okay, and then the last theme was developing a growth mindset. Though technology and user needs may both seem like they're constantly evolving and constantly changing, these are not excuses to avoid documentation. Strong, readable architectural documentation, user manuals, diagrams, and the like allow new people to be added to any system that you build over time, and it allows for their ideas and expertise to emerge and be added. Focus on seeking broader team training, disseminate the documentation to the widest possible team of stakeholders. This will also help ensure that other vendors and partners are aware of the intricacies of your product when they're engaging in their own efforts. It's the single strongest defense against a system falling into disrepair. And it's critically important that you continue to demonstrate the value of the work you've done and how it contributes positively to your partner's future roadmap. It's not the number of features developed or tickets closed per se, but the amount of use the end user will see as a result. Work to frame your client's perspective on your work. Demonstrate the value of further investment. All right, and then lastly, a couple of things you could start doing right now. Many of the reasons we've seen large projects fail tie directly to digital partners dropping the ball and failing to live up to our responsibility as digital leaders. It's not the fault of bureaucracies that they don't always have advanced technical talent. That's why they hire us. We need to do better. 2, we need to focus our project management work on the higher order efforts, such as building partnership, trust, and accountability. Definitely still do technical project management, monitor budgets and scope and such, but that stuff's a lot easier when you're seen as a true partner and not just a vendor. 3, put the needs of the end users first. The right technology and requirements will become apparent when you do. 4, always be looking at the full digital ecosystem, how your piece fits within that broader digital ecosystem. And then lastly, what we should always be doing as project and program managers is we're always implementing the highest value solution that meets the most needs at a controlled cost, and then grow it over time. All right, well, I have gone 5 minutes over my allotted time, but please feel free to connect with me. We can talk about anything digital, and thank you very much.